Only the highest vibrations of love and light can be in this space, and all objects in this space for this reading today. All other energies must leave now. I call in the highest level of the divine that knows that love is the power and the truth from which we read. The highest level guides and angels. Archangel Michael hold this space for us, and so it is. And so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth, as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of everyone connected to us. O Holy Spirit of God, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the Masters, teachers, and loved ones have. Okay, the records are now open. You look totally Pleiadian, but you're not. Okay, so you're not. No, you're so because I kept checking. I was like, okay, she looks Pleiadian. No, is she Pleiadian? No, and I'm like, okay, all right. So what I'm getting with you is you are definitely a starseed. You were born in that period when most of the starseeds started incarnating on Earth, right after like 1946, 1947. I don't know if you're aware of Dolores Cannon's book, The Volunteers.
I love her, yeah.
Yeah, so you and I are what they would consider to be first wave volunteers. So we were the ones that came in with a lot of experience to bust down the doors of ignorance and old outmoded systems. Okay, so that's mainly our role, which is a little different from the second waivers that were all folks that were born like in the 70s and 80s, and then the third waivers that are coming in like 90s on. So those are the real young people. So we older folks, older starseeds. The reason why we came first is because we came in with a lot more experience in dealing with these kinds of, situations. Okay, so what I'm getting with you as far as star system of origin is you had an initial first life in Lyra, and very, very briefly. I mean, I think you were very young when your family left Lyra. Okay, so that I'm seeing a very young child being brought on board one of the starships that was escaping Lyra from the Lyran Wars. Okay, so your soul is actually quite old. I mean, it's actually pretty. And I think that was part of the reason why you were chosen to be a first wave volunteer, was because you have such an ancient soul. So. However, what I'm getting as far as your family traveled, I think they kind of wandered a while, at least the folks that was on board that particular ship. I'm seeing a lot of wandering around. They went to I think the constellation of Cygnus and Hercules, trying to hide out from the Draconians, and then from there, they couldn't stay there, so they ended up, I think, temporarily going to Sirius, but they didn't stay there either. So what I'm seeing is they made a direct shot from Sirius to the belt stars of Orion. So you have kind of a Lyran Orion element to your soul, okay? Because most of your incarnations were spent in Orion. Now you were, yeah. So what I'm seeing as far, you were definitely belt stars, okay? So you were located in the belt stars. That's actually good because that was kind of like the good zone in Orion, okay? So and I'm getting Mintaka with you. Mintaka is one of the stars. It's not the one that's bright in the middle. It's the one that's kind of off to the side. So so I'm getting Mintaka. And let me tell you a little bit about the Mintakans. They're lovely people. So you're not one of the bad Orions, okay? So So what I'm getting with Orion's an interesting place. Most of what I know about Orion actually came from the records. So I've tried to do research out there, and there's not a whole lot other than a bunch of talk about reptilians, which is only just a part of the, story. So what I'm getting with your family and your lineage is that you come from a Lyran lineage. So your folks were what I would call the white Lyrans, and there was a small percentage of them that actually ended up making their new home in Orion. So
did you say white Lyrans?
White Lyrans, yeah.
Interesting you say that. Okay.
Yeah, there was two races in Lyra, two humanoid races. One was the white Lyrans. They were the more Caucasian-looking Lyrans, I guess, if you want to use Earth terminology. And then there were the Vegas, the people that lived in the Vega star system, which was right in Lyra also. They had blue skin. So all of the darker skinned people that, are in the different humanoid races actually have genetics dating back to Vega, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I call them the white Lyrans and the blue Vegas. So your lineage is mostly white Lyran. So your family, what I'm seeing with your family specifically is they were mostly they owned farms in Lyra, so they were farm people. But they your father at the time was a representative of his community in the Lyran Council. So he had kind of an elevated role. So he wasn't just a simple farmer. He was actually this is your Lyran father back in the day. I'm seeing that he was the representative for his particular community in the council. So he played a somewhat political role. And I think the reason why you guys managed to escape the wars was because he got wind of things were going wrong before I think a lot of other people did. So you guys were packing up and leaving just when things were really starting to get bad. So he because of I think his involvement with the council. He was privy to some information that some other groups weren't so much privy to. So, but because you guys left early, you were pursued by the Draconian starships, and so that's why you guys were wandering so much, throughout space for quite. I mean, it was almost like years. I mean, like years. So you almost like grew up on board a starship. I mean, it was like you didn't end up in Orion until you were like in your teens. Okay, so you what I'm seeing as far as when you all left Lyra, you were actually like about I don't know maybe 4 years old or 5. So you were very young. So you have memories of Lyra, but not like as clear cut as your memories of Orion. Okay, so I saw that your family wandered for a while. You were trying to, I think, escape and hide out from the Draconian ships. That there was like a couple of them that were pursuing you for a while. But I think there was kind of a sanctuary space that was set up in Cygnus. And a lot of the Lyran ships went there to hide out. And it was, I think, that sanctuary space was created by, I think, higher dimensional beings, quite a few angelic beings to assist the Lyrans in finding, just like a refuge place to hide out for a while. So when the coast was clear, you guys moved on to Sirius. And if you look on a star map, Sirius is like right in the middle of Canis Major, which is a constellation also known as the Large Dog. And it's right in front of another constellation, which is called Orion, and that's the Hunter. So when you see Sirius, it connects almost, it has like an invisible line almost directly to the belt stars. So for whatever reason, your family decided they weren't going to stay on in Sirius and they were going to move on. So they moved on to the belt stars. And the one they chose was Mintanka, I think because it was the most easily inhabitable. Okay, so the other two stars also had planets, but Mintanka seemed, the most pleasant out of the three. So what I'm seeing with Mintanka is quite a few Lyrans and Vega beings, and there was a lot of Vega beings as well that started their new lives there. Your family, I think, resumed their farming practices there. It was a little more difficult because they were used to the lush climate, the lush environment in the planets of Lyra, and it was not quite as, I guess, fertile and lush in Mintanka. So there was quite a bit of water. So it was almost like they had to start doing like hydroponics. So they had to totally change quite a bit of their farming practices. But they managed, Mintanka planets had a lot of water. And the way the folks got around there was mostly through boats and hovercrafts. So they had these hovercrafts that would take, people would get around on. They didn't really have like roads like we would have here on Earth. A lot of transport was done through water. So now they did have pockets of land here and there, and they would have like spaces where there would be like different pockets of land, and people would live, and build houses on these little pockets of land, and they would stay interconnected with each other. They had smaller communities. Your father and mother at that time wanted to resume, their farming practices, but because the land space was so limited, they almost had to learn to grow plants in the water. So that's how they were. It's kind of like a hydroponics kind of thing. Now, do you have any connection with farming, or your family has any connection with farming in this life? Or I'm just curious.
Not really, no.
Okay.
But there's tons of connections with water when you were talking about.
Okay.
With constant dreams that have been coming.
Okay.
Used to be maybe once every few months.
Okay.
Now they're almost every single night, and it's exactly what you described. There's pockets of land, and there's water everywhere.
Interesting.
And I wonder what that is. If that's maybe a memory, or if it's related. But it's interesting.
I'm pretty sure it's a memory. Like I said, you don't remember Lyra really well because you were so young, but most of your memories are probably going to be coming from Mintanka. So, the things that you're seeing in your dreams or in your memories is mostly from Mintanka. And Mintanka people, because of what they went through, were very hardy people. They were very resilient. Because of some of the limitations in their resources, they were great troubleshooters. They were able to, I think, utilize whatever resources they had. They were so willing to share with each other because they all had to rely on each other. It was like these were people that were very community oriented and very I would say resilient. They were extremely resilient. So Mintankas, because of what they went through, were very benevolent to strangers that came upon their space. So they became well known as being the consummate hosts for space travelers. So people would come to Mintanka as kind of a resting spot, as maybe a so they were like they would have like quite a few of these little what I would call bed and breakfast type of spaces, or their version of hotels, or whatever, like inns, where people would just stay. And I don't see that your family was so much involved with that. But I do see that they were very welcoming people. They were always willing to help others. So, and that was just a Mintanka way. They were just very generous, loving people. They valued family a lot, I think because they had to rely on each other so much. So family was of great importance to them, and they would celebrate like all kinds of different holidays. They loved holidays. I don't know why, but they loved holidays. I think they were just looking for excuses to have fun and celebrate. Because sometimes life in Orion could be kind of harsh. So I'm seeing like times when there was great windstorms and things that were rough on the Mintankas. So, and then not to mention, sometimes they would get attacked by. Now, all the outlier stars in Orion were mostly either reptilian outposts or tall gray alien bases. Okay, so particularly in Rigel, Betelgeuse, and Bellatrix. Okay, so all these stars that were around, the belt stars were mostly all the what I would call the Orion Empire people. So so they were constantly in conflict with the belt star people. So you had your belt star people that were mostly a mix of different species. Again, these Orion people learned to live among different species of beings, and most of the time they were able to get along with them, but sometimes there was conflict. Orion was under duality consciousness for quite a long time. So because of that, there's a resiliency to your soul, but there's also there's a beautiful quality about you that you understand many different types of people and beings. You're very accepting of them. Nothing freaks you out, I mean, it's kind of like you're just like, okay, you're different from me, but I still like you. I want to understand you. So if you can imagine like the Star Wars theme where there were the one where the cantina scene where you had all the different beings, they were kind of hanging out. That's what. Yeah, that's what Orion was like, by the way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what exactly what it was like. When I see that scene on Star Wars, I say, "Oh yeah, Orion." Yeah, so that is so totally Orion. I mean, they're just beings all over different humans, amphibian beings, tall grays, little grays, insectoid people, reptilians. They all just kind of intermixed with each other. So because of that, I think you just have an ability and to just appreciate diversity. Okay, so this is just another quality of Orion star souls is that they're people that are constantly seeking the truth because there was so much deception around Orion. So these are people that don't take a story at face value. They're always kind of looking beyond. Let's say, for instance, if you were watching a news story, you would be like, okay, there's some element about that seems off or seems fake. I want to research it and find out what's really going on. So That's an Orion, very Orion quality. They're truth seekers. They don't. They had to deal with a lot of deception when they were in their home planets. So, because of the duality consciousness that abounded there for so long. Another quality about Orion souls is they're extremely resourceful. They had to deal with limited resources, and they're always willing to share, but at the same time, they are very protective of what they have. So there's kind of that element of that too. So yeah, they're very, very protective. They're not just going to let anybody come into. I mean, they're very kind to strangers, but at the same time, they're going to be checking them out too. So so that's another soul quality that you brought with you from Orion. What the Orions looked like, it was like a mix, like I told you, a mix of beings, and they looked pretty much human. I mean, at least the human ones, they looked human. A lot of Orion star souls actually were either Caucasian-looking people, or they had different races. So they would have these big black guys that were these are big Orions. They were pretty prevalent, and the beautiful black ladies like I always think of Gabrielle Union as being like an Orion type. She looks like an Orion type to me, just very beautiful.
I'm not sure who that is.
Gabrielle Union, she's a black actress.
I'm sure I'd know her if I saw her in a movie. I don't know names very well.
Yeah, you would probably recognize her if you saw her. To me, she's kind of an Orion type. Yeah, when I was creating a presentation on the different star races, I was trying to find people that represented that race, and I was like, oh, Gabrielle Union. So I stuck her picture in my slideshow. So I was I was like, oh yeah, she looks like an Orion type. So, and they had, I think, some Asian-looking people as well, as far as the humanoids. It was like just a mix, it was just a mix of different races and species, and it's, it was an interesting place. And a lot of times, they would get along, sometimes they wouldn't, it was, always conflict. Now that's the downside of your soul, is that you're so used to duality consciousness that the concept of true unity consciousness is, even though it's something that I think you're very much in tune with, is not an expectation of yours. You know what I'm saying? So you're kind of like, okay, I know there's other star races who've achieved that, but I don't see that happening on Earth. So it's hard for you to visualize what that would be like, but you do have an understanding of it. The Orion people were not quite as spiritual as they were technical. So these were people who had to be very, I think, mechanically inclined. So these are folks that knew how to fix things, okay, on any level. So another Orion lesson, and this is a beautiful one, I think you'll like this, is these are people that know how to exhibit love even in the face of adversity. So these are people that stand in love and truth and unity regardless of whatever adversity is around them. And I'm getting a message from your guides that is why you were chosen to come here on Earth, was because you knew how to deal with the constant conflicts, and you knew how to stand in your truth and be able to bring in a better way. Now, as far as what I'm seeing, as far as what you did in Orion, I'm just seeing craftsmen. Like you were somebody that, I mean, you did some of the farming things, but you didn't really, I think, you didn't choose to follow in your family's footsteps. So I'm seeing a craftsman, somebody that built things, or craftswoman, if you want to call it that. You're somebody who built things, who can take something that was of no use and make it into something beautiful. Okay, so that's one of the many gifts that you come into this planet with, is the ability to repurpose things, to find, to recreate something that's beautiful and useful. Orions liked things that were beautiful but also had functionality. So that's another thing I think you come with as far as your gifts. Now you said you make jewelry.
Yeah, I do. I just picked it up again just recently.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So do you make them with crystals or?
Yeah, I use semi-precious stones. My personal favorite is clear quartz, even though there's so many out there that I love, but that is the one that resonates with me. But yeah, I use semi-precious stones and silver, and one of the funnest things to do if somebody gives me a big mess of chains and stones and old jewelry and little pieces, and it's just a mess. And then I take it apart and I use all the pieces that I can use, and I take those stones and then I do exactly what you said. I recreate it and I make something completely different. And I like doing that. And sometimes I make things that cost $1 or $2, and they cost me more, but I like to do that and then offer it to people who can only afford $1 or $2, and like in a secondhand shop. It's just fun.
Oh, that's really neat. Yeah. So that's exactly what you're doing. You're just taking things that are kind of a mess and making them beautiful and different, and repurposing them. So that's exactly, I think, one of the many gifts that you have is you have this ability to take something that someone else would find useless and just recreate something with it. So that's part of the resourcefulness of the Orion soul, is they like to fix things and they like to make things better. Okay, so which is also what you came here on Earth to do, is to fix things and make them better. Okay, so on both a very 3D level, but also on a higher spiritual level as well. So let me check in on some other lives. Now, this isn't your first life on Earth. You've had several. And I'm going to go back up a little bit and see what happened, what brought you to Earth. Okay, I'm seeing that your family always had a hand in whatever council that they were kind of political people in a way, not in a bad way. I mean, not like politics here on Earth, but they always wanted to be, and they saw this as kind of an elevated, like a calling of some sort. Like, oh, we want to be of, a public citizen, a public service. So we're going to volunteer to be on the council, that kind of thing. So it was more like a higher calling for them. They felt like that way they could be of service to their community and to their people. So what I'm seeing is your family, and this is throughout, I would say, several lifetimes in Orion, always had some sort of representative that was in the high Orion councils. Okay, so there was always, and the council consisted of many different races and species of beings. So there was, reptilians on the board. There was, and not all the reptilians were bad. I mean, there was some, and I think that's something interesting that maybe a memory you might have. You might remember some reptilian friends of yours that were actually pretty nice beings, So there's this dichotomy between the negative, reptilian entities that you read about here on Earth, and some of the beings on Orion that you remember, oh, they were pretty nice beings. They lived with us. they were part of our community, they were healers, whatever. So there's this kind of like this dichotomy against, okay, people are saying reptilians are bad, but I remember there were some really nice ones. But getting back to your how you ended up on Earth, I guess throughout the Galactic Federation, and which also had they sent out a message that, okay, we need to start sending in starseeds onto Earth because they just almost blew themselves up with Hiroshima. Okay, so there was this call for all these star beings to volunteer. You and I think a couple of other members of your soul family in Orion decided to volunteer. Okay, so I think the reason why you decided to volunteer was because you didn't have any big responsibilities on Orion that would keep you on Orion. So you felt like, okay, I'm at a point in my life, in my spiritual evolution where I can, go in a different direction. So, and you also wanted to be, again, the good public citizen. You wanted to be able to represent your family and Orion in the best way possible. So, and a lot of that was because a lot of, I think, Earth people especially have very, I think, negative views of Orion or has kind of a bad reputation. And you wanted to change that. You wanted it, to be like an emissary for the Orion, so that was another reason why you decided to go to Earth. You knew it was going to be a multi-lifetime commitment, and at least multi-lifetime in the sense of Earth lives, and maybe not so much. The Mintakas were mainly fourth and fifth dimensional, so these were fairly evolved beings. Okay, I mean, even though they were human and they lived in fourth and fifth dimension. Okay, so they had physicality, but they were I think a little more evolved than Earth humans in the third dimension. So you decided to incarnate on Earth, and it was not real difficult for you because you come with human genetics anyway. So it wasn't, and because of your Orion lineage, Orion lineage, you had the kind of, I think, genetics that you were able to incarnate into different Earth races. Okay, so it wasn't like super difficult for you. I'm seeing first life was actually Egypt. Okay, so you kind of bypassed Atlantis. Which normally most star souls start their Earth careers, if you want to call it that, in Atlantis. I'm seeing you bypass Atlantis. You saw Atlantis as having a lot of duality consciousness, and you didn't want to experience that again. So you incarnated into Egypt, and I'm seeing in Egypt you actually incarnated as a man, and you were a builder. Okay, so you were assisting, and no, you weren't a builder. You were an architect. Okay, you were one of the architects that was actually, I think, designing some of the new large monuments, and it's kind of interesting. The pyramids of Giza, the alignment of the pyramids of Giza look exactly like the belt stars, and that's what you were working on.
Wow.
Yeah. So you had the idea. You and I think some of the other Orion, starseeds had the idea of, oh, if we're going to build these pyramids, let's build it to honor where we came from. So So you had a hand in the building of the pyramids of Giza. So but it wasn't just you, it was like a whole group of you that decided this. So uh, Egypt has kind of a long history of, I think, constant connection with Orion and with also Sirius. Okay, um, so you'll see like a lot of their monuments having alignments to either Sirius or to Orion or even both. So and again, if you remember my little star chart, Sirius is very close to Orion. It's just like if you were to look at the belt stars and you see the big bright star right over here, that's Sirius. Okay, um, so there's this, I think, kind of symbiotic relationship between Sirians and Orion people. So I think they've connected with each other a lot. Now the layout of the pyramids in Egypt, and does pyramids have the shape itself? Does it resonate with you, or does it seem like it's a shape you're attracted to, or?
Well, I've always loved the number 3 and 5, and I've had visions and dreams where I see, it's gonna sound stupid, but they're like, they kind of look like sperm.
Okay.
Their head is a triangle, and they're flying. They're like shooting stars, but they have triangle heads, and they're very benevolent. They have just the slightest smile. And I don't know what they are, what they do, but I get a very, very good feeling in my chest when I've seen them. Like I said, mostly in my dreams and in my head, but I've drawn them, and they're always triangle.
Okay, so that's kind of a pyramidal type of shape.
I love pyramids, and I've had a past life regression that I'm not sure if it was Greece or Egypt. So I relate to that. I'm not sure, but the light is very, very clear.
Okay. I'm getting it was likely Egypt, but and I think you had, I think, 2 or 3 incarnations in Egypt. So it was like you like incarnated during different times of Egypt's history. But the first life, I'm seeing that you actually had a hand in building the pyramids of Giza. And although the pyramids were in alignment like the belt stars of Orion, they had shafts that was actually aligned to Sirius. And so there was, I think, some Syrian architects that maybe had a hand in that. It's thought that Isis and Osiris originated from Sirius. And then some of the other gods, Egyptian gods, originated from Orion, like Sobek, who has a crocodile head. I think he's an Orion entity, and some of the other more interesting looking Egyptian gods, and goddesses. So there's kind of this mix of the influence from Sirius and Orion in Egypt. Now this past life regression you had, what did you remember about it? I mean, what was it that stood out to you other than the pyramids?
I was walking barefoot, and I was on the softest dirt I've ever felt. The ground was very hard, but the dirt was like brownish red, and it was very, very, very soft. And I didn't see anybody, but I walked in a snaky line, and I kind of curved around, and then I had to go to a mound, and on this mound, which was really big, I leaned over, and when I leaned over, it was like a ritual. When I leaned over, this huge, huge green eye opened up, and when I leaned over, it literally like poofed this, all I can describe it as wisdom and love.
Hmm.
And it infused me. And it was very, very, I don't know how to describe it. It was extremely creator source like. And it was pleased with me, and there was no ego, and I was extremely happy with myself because I had done it. I'd done it the right way. So I walked back, and all these people were clapping, and they all looked Egyptian. I looked Egyptian. I was about 23, long black dark hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked back, and I kind of put my head down in humility. And as I was walking out the way I came, I saw a huge golden chair that I never even noticed when I walked in. Mm-hmm. And I took 3 steps up to the chair, and it had a very tall back. It was golden. I sat down, and I wasn't a queen. I was a facilitator in a way. And there was a lot of people that would come to me, droves of people, and they had questions. And what I would do is I would offer an answer that gave them some kind of mode that led them to figure it out themselves. So they left with, like, something planted, and then they figured it out, and they made it happen. And they all saw me as so wise and knowing. And I remember thinking that I was exactly like them. Mm-hmm. I had been them. It just happens to be where I am at this moment, and they will be too.
Right.
So it's kind of mediator, facilitator. And
maybe like a seer.
The answers.
Yeah, maybe like a seer, SEER, a seer. Like a, somebody that was kind of like a psychic, or like the. Like the Oracle of Delphi, if you remember that, people would come to her looking for answers to their questions, and she would go into a trance and get the answers for them. So, it's a lot like that. Yeah, like you would, go into your, mode, and then you would give them the answer, and it was almost like you were giving them an answer, but kind of like in a riddle, like almost like they had to figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because then they got, the whole point was for them to get the lesson, for them to get to feel the accomplishment. So it will really be their accomplishment and their growth, not because some woman told them this is what you should do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you were just kind of giving them the key, but they had to put the key in the door.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were like an oracle. Okay. So, because you were, I guess, blessed by the great being, with the one with the green eye, you had, and I'm trying to see what the being was, and it was a human eye that you were.
It looked like a giant human eye, but it was more. Huge. It was huge, and it felt. It was otherworldly because when it opened it's green, and it was just beautiful green. It was all knowing. Mm-hmm. Real eye. It was just almost as big as a sand dune. I mean,
wow.
It was big.
Wow.
And people didn't go to this eye. They didn't walk that path unless it was their time. So it wasn't something someone could accidentally walk into. In fact, you wouldn't even know it existed.
Right.
Until it was your whatever.
Your destiny to encounter this being. So what I'm getting about the eye, I don't know if this will resonate or not. Orion is the home of very, very, very high dimensional beings. And these beings are so evolved, they're like humongous, okay? So, and they were, I think, some of them were like the ancient Elohim. They were, the co-creators. So they weren't Source, but they were so close to Source that they were like a step down from Source, okay? So I'm getting that this being that you encountered was like a representative of these beings. So they were like a a co-creator consciousness. And they're now known as the Orion. It's called like the Orion Light or the Orion Light Council. They're just very, very elevated beings. And this is, I think, what part of the beauty of Orion is that there's like a very dark side to Orion. It's such a study in contrast. There's such a dark side to Orion with the reptilians and all the crazy stuff they were doing. But then there was also a beautiful angelic, heavenly aspect to Orion. It was like such a study in contrast that you could have, two of these realities existing in one place at the same time. But what I was getting is that because of, I think, your family and their lineage and their long involvement of being in service to the Orion people, that you had this instant link with this being, okay? It was like you were bestowed, these gifts so that you can continue to be of service to people, So it was like it was, blessing you with the Orion, energies, So so I don't know if that resonates or not, but that's what I'm picking up about this particular eye, if you want to call it that. So, yeah. And I do see you were younger. As a matter of fact, you were so young and you were a woman, so people were like, okay, there were some people that questioned you, like, all right, she's really young and she's a woman and she's supposedly wise, so they were just kind of like, they were expecting like a man, because that's kind of the expectation on Earth anyway. But when they saw your answers or heard your answers, they were like, oh my God, she is really truly blessed, or really truly, has these gifts. So there was no question after they had, encounters with you. So yeah, that is, now that was in, I think, not your first life in Orion, but I think second or third. Okay, so first life you were a man, and you were helping to build these great monuments. Second life I'm seeing is a woman, and third life you're a woman. So you kind of bounce between genders in some of your lives. I'm just seeing, sometimes you would incarnate as a man, sometimes you would incarnate as a woman. Your soul essence is predominantly female, but sometimes I think you incarnated as a man because you felt like it would be easier or safer. Okay, so.
God, is that ever accurate?
Yeah, it would be easier or safer for you. So. Let me see what else, what other incarnations you had on Earth, because you had a few. Okay, I'm seeing Greece actually. Now the life you described was definitely Egyptian, but I'm seeing you also had an incarnation in Greco-Roman. I think more Greco than Roman, but and I'm seeing. Okay, that's interesting. Macedonia. Okay. That's interesting. That's kind of a mountainous area of Greece, and it's a little bit colder than the ones that are like the rest of Greece. It's and it's a little more. These people they had Greek culture, but because of the environment they lived in, because they lived in the mountains. There was a hardiness about them, that they had to withstand, more difficult, environments. So I'm seeing you were a man in that life as well, and I'm seeing that you were a shepherd of some sort, that you took care of animals. I'm seeing in the mountains with goats and sheep, and you're taking care of them. But you also owned them. You weren't like just taking care of them for somebody. These were your flocks. And again, it's kind of that tie back to your family having these farming connections, which is kind of interesting. But but you didn't do, physical farming. You just had you owned, these, and you were fairly well to do because you owned so many flocks that you were considered to be like an elder in your village. And again, people would come to you, to resolve conflicts or to help them, with their issues or problems, so you were kind of again put into the role of being an advisor of some sort. Okay, so and you were also like an elder, and you were highly respected. Except in this lifetime, I'm seeing you as an older man. In the Egyptian life, you were a very very young woman. So again, you were just having these different incarnations. From Greece, I'm seeing an incarnation in the Middle East. I'm thinking possibly Israel. So around maybe the latter biblical times. And but then I'm also seeing that you had incarnations in Europe, but also in Africa. So it was kind of like you kind of bounced around a bit, throughout your different incarnations on Earth. Now your heritage in this lifetime, is it like a mix of European, or do you have some Native American, or what's your family lineage in this life?
I am Russian Polish,
Okay.
and my mom is a mix of so many different things that even no matter how hard I tried to tie her down, she just said like everything, just a mutt. So, I'm guessing Eastern European or European. I have no idea other than the rest.
I'm getting like a mix of so many different things that it's hard to really. And again, this is part of that Orion diversity. Okay, it's like almost like you chose this family because they were so diverse in their lineage that you thought it was a good representation of your Orion soul self. So I'm seeing African, I'm seeing European, I'm seeing I don't know, maybe even some Asian in there. And definitely Native American. I'm seeing some of that too. So I'm just seeing such a mix that is hard. I mean, I can't even begin to guess. I think probably Eastern European might be the more prominent one, um, but your lineage in this lifetime is such a mix, and that's I think indicative of some of your past lives. You've had incarnations almost in every continent. I mean, it's like I'm seeing some Asian lives, I'm seeing African, I'm seeing a Native American life. I mean, and it's just kind of like you just.
Do you see anything specific in the Native American life?
Yeah, let me check in on that because I'm just seeing one, but okay. Okay, they're telling me it's uh, northwestern tribes. So the tribes that are kind of around the area where you live right now. And I'm seeing that, again, you were an artisan in this life. And you used to, I think, carve the totems, the big totems that they have. So yeah, that's what you used to do. So you had this ability to, I think, communicate with animal spirits, and you would take these communications you would have and create totems out of them. And sometimes you would create the really big ones, and then other times you would create little ones for people to have in their homes, just kind of as representative of their own personal animal totems or their family animal totems. So you were very gifted, I mean, with working with wood. And it's no wonder that even in this lifetime you love to create with your hands. Okay, so yeah, you just this is a carryover from that life as well as your Orion lives. Okay, so
Did you see if I was male or female in that life?
I think you were male. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, you had a mix of female and male incarnations.
Yeah.
So I think you have. I would say your soul leans more towards feminine, but there's also a very masculine aspect to your soul energy, almost like androgynous. So you could easily incarnate as a man or a female, and you're comfortable. I think you're probably lean more towards female energy, but you can also incarnate as a man and be comfortable with it. So, and then you're also born. Let's see, you're kind of Taurus, cusp of Aries Taurus. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and Aries is a very masculine sign, star sign, and Taurus is a very feminine one. So how interesting that you have that balance even with your zodiac sign. You're kind of like a mix of both.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I've thought that many times actually, that I feel male a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, not in a human way. I don't feel like a guy. That's not what I mean. But
yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, like it's like I can almost see the face of me,
Mm-hmm.
In a different life, and just like it's in there.
Yeah.
It's in there. It's not something I want to express. I don't feel like a guy, but it's there in my past. I can feel it.
Yeah, it's and what's interesting about our souls is, and I see this, I don't know, I see this in the records. I don't know how I know this, but it seems like even though we may incarnate in different physical vessels, our facial features always seem to stay the same or very similar. So you'll have like similar facial features throughout your different, even if you're incarnating in different races. So even if you were incarnating as an African or incarnating as Asian, the basic facial features with souls always seem to stay the same. So I do see that you're able to express very feminine and very masculine, I think features at the same time. And like I said, it's not like, oh, I want to be a man, or I want to not be my sex. It's not like that. It's just that it's no big deal to you. It's like, okay, yeah, I could be a man, or I could be a woman. So very androgynous qualities. So it's actually a good thing. So it just shows that this kind of, again, the Orion ability to, I think, inhabit duality. It's like you're a yin and yang person. You kind of like express this, balance between the yin and the yang. So, yeah.
Okay.
And do you have any questions for me? I mean, I've been talking for a while, so I just want to make sure I get. We have about 15 minutes left in the reading, so.
Okay. There was 2 questions I wondered about. Do you see anything relating to elves, fairies, that realm of existence?
Okay, let me check in on that. Okay, I do see an incarnation as a druid, and actually what I'm seeing even beyond that was here on Earth, but beyond that, when you were a little baby, a little girl in Lyra, Lyra was a very magical place, and they had, different beings that lived in Lyra, not quite to the, diversity you'd find in Orion, but you used to play a lot with what I would call the Lyran elementals. So these were kind of like nature spirits. So they're kind of like the precursor to earth fairies, okay? So they were bigger than fairies. They weren't quite human sized, but you know how, in popular culture, the fairies look really little. These beings were more like maybe 2 to 3 feet tall, so they were a little bigger, but they were definitely elementals. I mean, they were assigned on Lyra to take care of, the plants and the animals and, the water and with air and things like that. So, so you have these ancient soul memories of these elemental beings. Okay, so they were your friends. You remember that. I remember what I'm seeing in the records is you were crying on the ship because you missed your elemental friends. They weren't able to come with you. Okay, so I see you crying, and you always swore that you would try to find a way to reconnect with them. I do see that you chose to have a druidic life in the Great Britain area because you wanted to have an opportunity to reconnect with elementals, and that's what you worked mostly with during that life.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And you worked with them. You were like a druidic priestess of some sort. You did ceremonies in the forest. I see that quite a bit. So you had a lot of lives on Earth. I mean, it's like I mean, like some stars, like me, for instance, I maybe had a handful of lives on Earth, if even that. But you had a lot of lives on Earth, so which is nothing. There's nothing wrong or good about it, but you really have a lot of experience with Earth. So it's no wonder you were chosen to be, a first wave starseed. So which brings us, I think, to you said you had a second question. So let me answer that, and then I'll get into your soul mission.
Okay, so I think you already answered this actually. You don't see anything with me in Lemuria at any time, do you?
I'm not seeing Lemuria or Atlantis. I saw that you went straight to Egypt. So
okay.
I think you have an appreciation for Lemuria, but I'm not seeing an incarnation there. Okay, so I think there was cultures that you incarnated into that carried over the Lemurian, I guess, essence, for lack of a better term. And so that was your connection with Lemuria, I think, was more through, because I'm seeing you did have some Western Pacific lives, so like I said, you were kind of all over the globe. So so you had some cultures, I think maybe a Polynesian past life that where I think it might have been, timeline's not real clear to me, but they were, I think, they used to have stories about Lemuria, and you felt this connection with it because it sounded so much like Lyra, so yeah. So I do see kind of this wistfulness about Lemuria, but I don't see an actual incarnation there. I just saw you went straight to Egypt, and you had like 3 lives in Egypt. Egypt was probably the one place where you incarnated into the most. And then other than maybe, there's some parts of Europe. And I do see an incarnation also in Russia. And this was, I think, in the latter 1800s. And I think that, early to mid 1800s. I'm seeing that in that lifetime. That was a lifetime you had before the Native American lifetime. The Native American lifetime, I think, was the previous lifetime you had to this particular lifetime. So because of that, I think you feel a great affinity for Native American culture. So, and it seems very natural to you. It's why you chose to incarnate. I don't know if you were born in Washington State, but it's why you chose to go back to Washington State, because that was where your last life was. So it was just familiar to you. there's a familiarity to that area. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I feel comfortable here. It's. Do you have any more questions, or do you want me to get into soul mission? We can get into soul mission.
Soul mission. Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. So what I'm getting for soul mission is you have a multifaceted mission. Okay. So again, it's that, I think diversity of being an Orion soul. So your mission is, I think the main mission is to take what's broken here on this planet and fix it and make it better. Okay. So what does that, relate to as far as day-to-day life? So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing you getting involved with some spiritual groups in your area. And I'll also see you maybe, I think, disseminating information to different people. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but are you a writer at all? Do you write or?
Yeah, I do. I do automatic writing.
Okay, so I'm seeing you doing this automatic writing and being able to translate it into messages that you'll give to people. So I don't know if this is going to be like some sort of service that you'll provide to people, or if this is just something you're going to do and just share, freely with everybody. But I do see you getting more into this writing, and I see you actually taking your jewelry and stepping it up even further, where and I see you actually evolving into repurposing other items as well. So maybe not just jewelry, but items for the home, things that, but you'll be infusing them with these higher level energies. So it's like you're going to learn to channel these higher level energies and infusing them into the jewelry and the items that you're going to be creating, so that just the jewelry in themselves will elevate people's vibrations. Okay, so does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense. Yeah.
Yes, it definitely does.
Yeah. So you're going to take your jewelry making and make it a step even further than that. It's just like, going up to the next level. And I see you also making other items too. And I'm seeing you doing this writing. It's like this, and it's almost like a light language in a way. It's just like, and that's coming from this connection that you have with the Orion Light Council. Okay, so yeah, so you have this Orion Light Council connection. So and these entities are actually you have many guides, but they're probably your major guides. Okay, you've been guided by them throughout your multiple incarnations. So and I think a beautiful illustration of that was in your Egyptian life that you described to me. So it's, so, okay, unfortunately we are at the end of our time, so I do have to kind of wrap things up, but I just wanted to thank you so much for allowing me to do this reading for you. It was fascinating going through your life history. You have a beautiful, it's just a beautiful mix of different things. I just love it, so.
Thank you. I'm a mutt.
Yeah, you are, but a beautiful mutt. So it's.
Thank you so much. I love this. This was awesome.
Okay, I'm going to do the closing prayer real quick, and then I'll disconnect our energy. I would like to thank the Master's teachers and loved ones for their love and compassion. I would like to thank the Lords of the Akashic Records for their point of view. And I'd like to thank the Holy Spirit of Light for all knowledge and healing. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen. The records are now closed. Amen. Your energy goes with you. My energy stays with me.